KrakCast News is back. I'm John. There's Josh over there. Dave is here. Dr. Mike. Let's start out with something that's been all over the news lately. If you've taken a look at any newspaper in the last week or maybe 2 weeks, you've probably seen some mention about this. It involves the American ambassador to Poland and her involvement with kind of an interesting, maybe complicated subject. Here's the backstory. Earlier this year, I think in January, TV in Katowice aired a story about some idiots, I forgot where, it doesn't matter, in the forest. They got together and celebrated Hitler's birthday. Yeah, celebrated Hitler's birthday. And the Katowice did a story on this about, kind of suggesting it was maybe evidence of a resurgence and fascism, neo-Nazis in Poland, et cetera, et cetera. Got a lot of media play throughout Europe. And the prosecutor got involved because, this is against the law in Poland, right? Fascist symbols, promoting fascist ideologies, et cetera. And the deeper the prosecutor got into it, the more they started uncovering kind of awkward questions about how the whole thing was put together. And some of the ministers in the Polish government have publicly criticized Katowice about their methods and maybe their motivations for broadcasting this story. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This is where the ambassador comes in. The American ambassador to Poland, her name is Georgette Mossbacher. She became the ambassador just a couple of months ago in September. She stepped forward and she got involved by sending a letter to the Prime Minister, Morawiecki, saying that she didn't appreciate the attacks on Katowice because it's because of freedom of the press and freedom of speech, et cetera, and that the government should tone down its criticism. Now that's controversial enough, but there's another layer on top of this because Katowice is owned by an American company. It's owned by Discovery Channel, right? So people are questioning her motivation. Is she stepping in to protect the American company? Is she stepping in for freedom of speech? It's messy. It's complicated, guys. Where do we start on this?
Well, I definitely think she's stepping in just to protect the company. What they're actually it's not a matter of freedom of speech, let's be honest. TV stations can say what they say, but if they say something that's untruthful or inappropriate, then the government, as any other entity, has a right to complain or criticize. And, well, even if Discovery is not exactly a right-wing stronghold in the U.S. or anything like that, it's still an American company in Poland, and Trump and his ambassadors are going to be, protecting their interest in foreign countries, no matter whose side they're on.
This is a private company. This looks to me like her sticking her nose in her business where it absolutely does not belong. Dave?
Well, it's not the first time. TVM were issued a fine, weren't they, over the coverage of anti-government marches in 2016, and the White House instantly reared up on Poland. They do this in all countries where the question of the independence of journalists owned by American companies comes into play. And I don't find that surprising. But
okay, but wait, would you, for example, in your case, and let's say there's an Irish company.
Listen to the response from the Polish government.
Listen to the response from the Polish government. I'm going to talk over you. If there was an Irish company that had a problem, forget about media, some other company had a conflict with the government, would you expect the Irish ambassador to get involved personally and say, you need to back off?
No, because Ireland don't have international media firms around the world. It's not a comparable example. We're comparing the United States and Ireland. Supporting TVN's anti-Polish activity, alleging that it was engaged in a plot to overthrow the government. That's the response. They go straight from a statement from a US ambassador to a plot to throw off the US government. It's the old
kind of a big leap.
It's the old elites, the cabal, isn't it, John? They've all been sitting around the fire at in a castle in Brandenburg and have decided to punish naughty Poland.
All according to the plan.
This is standard diplomacy. Perhaps she was a bit heavy-handed in her statement. But
funny thing is, in her letter to the government, she misspelled the Prime Minister's name, and there was another mistake. I think she mislabeled the position that somebody held or something.
What is it with them State Department translators? You remember when they were launching the reset with Putin, and they brought the button. Do you remember this story? Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State.
Ridiculous PR stunt. Yeah,
and the button it was supposed to say reset, and. It didn't say reset. It was the wrong
something
word.
Like Big Mac or something like that or something. Ridiculous. What about just going back to the ambassador thing? I don't know Josh, you can tell us how you do it in the UK, and Dave, I don't know how you do it in Ireland, but American ambassadors, there's two kinds of ambassadors. Some are, we call them foreign service officers, or bureaucrats, basically. They're theoretically nonpartisan, they're administrators, and they get sent wherever there's an opening. And then on the other hand, we have ambassadors that are appointed, political appointees that are typically donors for political parties. Now, Trump, as the president, gets to appoint the ambassadors. So, his ambassadors are going to be, organizers and fundraisers for the Republican Party. Mosbacher, the ambassador to Poland, she has a history in the cosmetics industry and a long history of, supporting Republican candidates.
And a lot of her husband's dying.
And she's 3 times divorced, actually. 3 times divorced. Nothing wrong with that. Not saying anything wrong with that, right? How do you do it in Ireland and England? Do you have political appointees or professional foreign service officers?
I might be wrong, but I don't really think we do the political appointee diplomat thing. It's nearly all drawn from the diplomatic corps. It's a career.
It's not a reward to friends or anything like that.
Look, as far as I know, that's not the way we do it in Ireland. As far as I know, look, I could be wrong. We've got a lot of ambassadors around the world, but maybe some of them are political appointees.
Josh,
but in general, they're drawn from the civil
UK?
service.
In the UK, it's. There is a whole strand in the civil service, which is the diplomatic service, and if you're going to be an ambassador, you will have been whilst still at university. It's quite likely that people will have identified you as being.
So you're on a career track.
Yeah. It's a pretty serious. Although there might be a thing that Americans have this greater kind of fluency at public speak because an ambassador does have to be able to speak smoothly and, comfortably in public. There are, duties and things like that. And it may be that English people with their natural inarticulacy and...
I don't believe that for a minute. I don't believe that the British people can't speak. What are you talking about?
No, but not all... Yeah, of course, some people can speak, but other people can't. I mean, when you hear, reality TV and you have American people in the street being interviewed. They just chat away, without.
They don't, not like
they
ambassadors,
sound like idiots,
though.
but come on, it's not. Nobody expects me to walk around the streets of London and walk up to somebody and start talking to them, and they turn out to be, have the oracle skills of Churchill or something.
All right, let's bring this back in. But the American system for appointing ambassadors, and I think Mosbacher is a good example of this. We shouldn't really be proud of this. Too often, as I said, it's a reward for political allies. Dave, listen to this. This is interesting. I looked up. This is a list of American ambassadors to Ireland.
Oh, and Ireland, by the way, is seen as a real cushy number.
Exactly. It's a place to go. There's dinner parties and cutting ribbons.
The guy that owns the Pittsburgh Steelers for years, wasn't it?
Again, American ambassadors to Ireland since the Second World. Listen to these names since the Second World War: O'Malley, Rooney, Foley, Kinney, Sullivan, Fitzgerald.
Rooney was the guy that owned the Steelers.
McCloskey. McDowell. So you get the point here.
Well, the new guy has.
This is rich people who donated to the president's party who get at the end of their lives when they're 65 years old, they get to spend 2 years in the land of their grandfather, and that's what it is.
Well, you say that, okay, but the new Trump nominee, which has just been approved in Ireland, is Mr. Edward Crawford, an 80-year-old businessman from Ohio with Republican. Okay, yeah, maybe you're completely right about that.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't have a very good system for appointing these. Anyway, let's transition into a related subject in this
you like diplomacy?
This whole thing with the ambassador, that's foreign media ownership. We mentioned that Discovery is the owner of TVN. And, the vast majority, I think easily 75% of the print media in Poland is owned by German companies.
Say, in Ireland, a lot of the print media is owned by British companies,
Yeah, but there's a movement
Doesn't
here.
mean the journalists in question aren't Irish and aren't doing as good a job as they
that's
can
true, but
to provide information.
But here in the Polish context, there's this growing movement. Dr. Mike, I think you know something about this. There's a growing movement in the government, especially the current government. They call it repollinization. They want to repollinize the media since so much of it.
One of their uglier ideas.
Since so much of it, again, print media and broadcast media is foreign owned, especially German owned. Is this just an example of the kind of the prickly nature of the current government, or do they have a point?
It's kind of both. I mean, they do have a point. The media in general is definitely an entity that directs public opinion and views. And if they're owned by foreign companies, there's room there to be suspicious that their interests don't necessarily lie with the Polish people, as in, we need to show them the truth. But they might be more swayed to show a truth that they've been brought up with. But this is getting a little paranoid and cynical, and besides, print media is dead. So what difference does it make who owns a corpse?
There was also no need for this correction. There's a vibrant independent media scene in Poland, including conservative outlets. There always has been. When you take over the national broadcaster and you start making changes, even if they don't mean Polish people don't have access to all the information they want, of course, the internet isn't censored or anything here. People can go online and read whatever they like. However, it makes your government look authoritarian. It makes them look like assholes, basically, when they put like warning signals on a movie like Ida. Like, the Polish people aren't intelligent enough to watch a fucking movie without being warned about it. It's ridiculous.
Well, that's most politicians, most elitists think that the public are a bunch of idiots, and the truth is the politicians stem from the public. They're our representatives. So if they think the public are idiots, what does that say about them?
Of the people.
Our fault.
Well, also, there's a thing that I think that governments kind of enjoy deflecting the idea of things going wrong onto foreign-owned private companies, so that you don't see that actually governments, which are also staffed by people, can be equally, if not more, incompetent.
I'd love to get your take in the context of the BBC, Josh, which is always a constant political football as well, and compared it to the situations.
It's interesting. I think I certainly don't trust the BBC very much now, nowhere near as much as I used to, but I think it's basically once you start catching out falsehoods, or you can see, and we can all do this, when you can see that even when you're being given the facts, they're being spun in such a way as to, steer you in a certain direction. And I've, caught the BBC out like that so many times. You kind of know where their biases are, and now I just read into them. If I read one of their articles, I don't think of it as being the unvarnished truth. I think, well, of course they're going to slant this way, so probably the truth is buried in there, but not quite as clear.
I think it's fair to say as you get older, you get better at interpreting media bias, if you like, and as Josh says, it shouldn't prevent one from reading certain publications. There's still valuable information on all of these sites.
Seems like this is one of those things that's never going to go away. Never going to go away. If the broadcaster is state-owned, like in Poland,
sometimes, but I still read it every day.
TVP, obviously state-owned, Polish-owned. So the other side says, "Oh, it's government propaganda, right? You can't trust it." But when a media outlet is foreign-owned, then somebody says, "Oh, it's foreign-owned, you can't trust it." So no matter what, it's going to get criticism.
Well, that was exactly my point. Yeah.
Moving down the road, literally down the road to Katowice, just an hour west of here, there's something very interesting going on. Dave, tell us what's happening in Katowice.
Well, we've got the UN climate change conference going on, haven't we? Is this the second time Poland's hosted this, or?
I think there was another, maybe not the climate summit, but some kind of event. There are different events also run by the UN, maybe, possibly.
I wonder how many of them are staying in Krakow, because the restaurants and hotels aren't up to scratch for them in Schloss.
Interesting
There's going to
choice.
be a lot of expense accounts given a hard workout in the next couple of weeks.
Interesting choice in Katowice. Interesting choice
of carbon dioxide getting up in the atmosphere.
I'm determined to get this
Champagne bottles opening.
Do we have a host on this show?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. This guy.
The guy who keeps getting interrupted constantly.
Sorry, John. Go ahead.
What is it, sixth time, seventh time? Katowice, eighth time. Katowice, interesting choice for a climate change summit, don't you think?
It has a big conference center, doesn't it? A big modern, gleaming spaceship of conferences.
It's superb.
Built in the 70s.
No, well, that's the Spodek Arena, but there's a brand new conference centre right next to it. And
I didn't want to embarrass you by correcting you, Mike, because
you think it was intentional, maybe?
I just see the videos of them.
You think it was intentional, the symbolism of the coal country hosting the climate change summit?
I think that's an interesting point. I think a lot of people are being asked about that today, and what the spin is that, well, look, Poland has problems with climate change, so it symbolises what we're trying to solve, but also Poland is trying to come up with solutions. Now, the Polish government, and probably the previous one as well, are always pushing this line. Well, we're trying to think of solutions. Yeah. But you know what? These solutions, you're going to end up with solutions that were implemented in a lot of countries in the 80s and 90s. Just fucking get on with it.
There's a public security angle to this whole thing as well. Terrorism.
Yeah, we're on an anti-terror alert, aren't we, in the whole country?
Yeah, you think it's just because it's UN and just because there's that many dignitaries here that automatically it reaches that kind of level?
If there's going to be a terrorist attack, why not now? Please.
I think without tempting fate, Poland's recognised as one of the safest countries in the world. They have to move to terror alert level because of the personnel who are in town, I would have thought.
Yeah, I reckon it's not because of the information they received, it's because of who's there and what's going on and the names
from
involved.
Orange to amber.
Well, yeah, and aren't we? I mean, it's pretty much like living in Hungary or Turkey or Egypt. I don't know.
I don't like the phrase
Somaliland.
Amber Alert as well. It just doesn't really scream anything to me. Like, what do you do when an Amber Alert starts?
Beige Alert.
It sounds like beer, or like amber, which Poland is quite famous for, so it makes sense. But at work, they actually sent out emails telling us to, be vigilant and remember that, if somebody enters the building inappropriately, that, lock the doors and windows, et cetera, et cetera. And, okay.
Well, if you're in Krakow in the last few days, if you've seen some big caravan of police cars, it's almost certainly because one of the VIPs from this conference is staying here and is moving back and forth. So a lot of the public security apparatus is very visible right now because of the climate change thing going on in Katowice.
Well, actually, I saw a bunch of police in black vans in front of the KFC on Florianska yesterday. So
KFC, an integral stop on any VIP's route, I would say. Moving on, 2 holidays this week. One just passed, one coming up. We're recording this on a Sunday, a few days ago on Thursday night. The first of the holidays, Andrzejki, St. Andrew's Day. Andrzejki. Now, Mike, tell us about the Polish twist or the Polish interpretation of St. Andrew's Day.
Well, without getting into all the details about St. Andrews, because, well, I don't really know them, it used to be a pretty big party night for centuries and generations. And the idea was that girls could read their fortune and find out about their future husbands. One of the little traditions they would do on the night from the 29th to the 30th being St. Andrew's Day, they would pour hot wax through the hole in a key, into cold water, and then from whatever shapes and weird, globular structures would form, you would kind of figure out what your future husband would look like.
So it's a highly scientific tradition, I see.
But I mean, I'm sorry, but like white wax, like congealing in water. I mean, their future husband's going to be in the porn industry or something.
He's going to be horribly deformed.
Yeah, Polish people ever think of maybe just like forgetting some of these weird little traditions, like. Anyway.
But was that the only thing, or was it just that and drinking, basically?
Oh, it's always an excuse for drinking. One of the main reasons it's a party night, though, is it's like the last major event before the beginning of Advent. And for a long time, Advent was the time where you chill out or you couldn't party. It was like more about, looking into yourself.
I thought that was
soul
Lent.
Searching. Lent
Quiet
as well.
contemplation.
Yeah, exactly. Preparing for, the birth of our Lord Jesus
But
Christ, blah, blah, blah.
Now, this is anecdotal. I know it's only my experience, but I don't know what you guys think. But I can remember even in my time in Poland, 15 years ago, maybe almost 20 years ago, Andrzejki was kind of a big deal, or at least I had that impression. And today it's almost forgotten.
I'm wondering, John, is our perspective skewed by Mr. Mike Doogie and his wild little classmates running around like lunatics on Andrzejki every year? I think we used to hang around with a lot of med students, and I think they particularly enjoyed this holiday. And since we've stopped socialising with young medical students, perhaps in our perception it's gotten less
maybe
wild.
in the student dormitories it's crazy. I don't know.
No, it's calmed down. I mean, there's still parties going on and things like that. But one of the main reasons, like I said, it was a big event was because it was before Advent really kicked off. But now nobody really cares that much anymore. They care a lot less. So, it's one more
what the
night
problem
out.
is, maybe, Mike, that people don't have those old school keys with the holes in them that you need to pour the wax through. Maybe that's the problem.
I've got one of those little like NFC chip keys to open up my door. It's like, how do you pour wax through a little computer chip?
To modernize things.
Your like actual front door is a card.
Like into my building.
Into your building, sure. But the key is surprisingly resistant to these changes in technology, isn't it? I mean, you just never see a front door without a key, even these days still.
Actually, I'm about to buy myself one of those smart locks so I can open over the phone.
Just to shut me up.
The other holiday is coming up on December 6th. It's called Mikołaj, St. Nicholas Day. Some of you listening might not know that in Poland there are actually kind of 2 Christmases. Mike, as our token Polish guy, please continue telling us about Mikołaj.
Alrighty, sir. Well, I wanted to do like a southern hick accent, but I guess I couldn't.
Yeah, good luck with that.
All right. It's more your thing, right?
Yeah, that's my thing for sure.
Growing up.
Well, because in like Western cultures, it's Saint Nicholas that brings presents to kids during Christmas. But actually, Saint Nicholas, as a saint, his saint day is the 6th of December, and he is known for giving out small gifts to children. So that's when it's celebrated in Poland. And parents now give, their kids presents and mainly candy and sweets and chocolates. But it's become, more and more expensive gifts over the last few recent years. Because on Christmas, it's the baby Jesus is the one that delivers the presents.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is interesting. I've heard it varies in different regions in Poland. Now, again, just to be clear, Santa Claus comes on December 6th.
Yes.
At night when you're sleeping, he puts the presents in your bed. And then on December 25th or maybe 24th, either Jesus brings presents or an angel brings presents or there are various animals. Depending, it's a regional thing, right? That's where you're supposed to kick in and say yes.
I always thought Jesus disapproved of the commercialization of Christmas.
Which imagine Bible on your own birthday, you're expected to bring gifts. You just popped into the world.
Some bullshit. Yeah, that's why we invented Santa Claus.
Well, Mikołaj is a big deal, especially in schools, right? Because kids, when they're at school that day or the day before, I guess, on December 6th, they celebrate. Santa Claus comes to the classroom. They get candy, maybe some little, small presents.
The Secret Santa thing happens on St. Nick's Day.
It's a great little tradition, but the one thing I don't like about it is it really draws a lot of question from Irish and English people. Like, they're really fascinated by it. What do you mean there's another Christmas? What? Explain this to me. I want details. Yeah. Most Polish traditions, they're fine to let pass by as cultural differences, but not this one.
I wonder who else does Mikołaj? Who else does December 6th?
There are a few other countries, but we also have to remember, I think it's in Mexico where they actually celebrate more Three Kings Day. So what is it, January 6th, as the actual day to give presents and gifts. And, in
Narcos, they call it Mexico.
The Netherlands do St. Nick's Day. That's been a thing forever.
So Poland's not alone in this?
No, I don't think so. No, it's a nice little tradition, getting the kids a little gift. But
I think also Hungary and Turkey.
Yeah, Turkey. Because wasn't St. Nicholas from Turkey?
Yes.
I mean, the bit that twists my melon is the whole Jesus bringing the gifts on Christmas Day thing. Like, I thought that was kind of the whole idea of Santa, was like Did
you say twist your melon?
Yeah. It's kind of a tacit acknowledgement that Jesus wouldn't approve of all our commercialization of his birthday. I mean, wasn't that always a thing when you were growing up? Look, enjoy this Americanization of our sacred holiday. But it's not right.
Yeah, it's our fault.
Always my parents blame the Americans on Christmas getting too expensive.
You guys go rushing to embrace Halloween and Valentine's Day and Christmas. And it's
where was Halloween invented?
Somehow.
Samhain, Irish fucking holiday.
Right.
You copied and then commercialized. God, I love commercialization.
Thank goodness we haven't picked up on other American things like Black Friday.
Scale electrics.
Exactly. Speaking of Christmas, you may have noticed the Christmas market is up and running in Krakow's Rynek and will be, I think, until the first week of January, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that. Let me know if I'm wrong. Anyway, big part of the Christmas market is the tradition of Szopki, right? Mm-hmm. Dave, tell us about Szopki and the connection with UNESCO, actually.
Oh, UNESCO always trying to get in and take a piece of the action from themselves, aren't they? Did we really need UNESCO to judge crib building what is it? It's not a World Heritage thing. It's a UNESCO activity. What is the even classification?
Oh, yeah, by the way, the Szopki is like, we call it a nativity scene. But it's basically, making the nativity scene.
The activity is now protected by UNESCO. Same as Ireland had hurling added to the list this year. What's next? Drinking Guinness as a protected fucking sacred tradition?
It should be. But
it's not going anywhere, Michael.
Just to clarify, what UNESCO decided to actually qualify as the protected intellectual heritage, whatever, was that these nativity scenes incorporate something about Krakow. So those always have to have the scene of the Mariacki Church.
It's always Mariacki, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's a pretty obvious one. It's you stick it in a nativity scene, you stick it on pantyhose, whatever.
Don't see UNESCO rushing to, protect long Polish legs either, but John, I mean, that's next, isn't it?
They definitely might inspect them.
Are you guys big on the whole Christmas market thing? You like going there and checking it out or not?
I like the bigos, but it really hurts me to pay 15 zloty for a bowl of fucking bigos. And it's good bigos as well, so I'm in this dilemma. I'm really like good bigos, but I don't like paying 15 zloty.
Where do you guys stand on the hot wine thing?
It's disgusting.
It's one of those things where I have it once a year because it smells nice. It seems like a good idea. Then we're with friends and somebody decides, let's go get it. It's smell it, first sip. I think this is coughed up cough syrup that's gone bad or something like that.
I really like it for that first. Like you, Mike, I only have one cup per year, but the one that I have, I do really enjoy. And when I finished it, I realised I don't want another one because I'll be too drunk, and also the flavour will be too much.
I don't understand Christmas markets. If Jesus delivered the presents, then he would have loved Galeria Krakowska. That's all I'm saying. If that's what this is, Jesus loves giving out gifts. I think he'd have gone straight to Galeria.
Hey, isn't the hot wine pretty pricey too? The last one I had was, I don't know how much it cost, but it was a lot.
It used to be reasonable.
This tiny cup you get, yeah? Anybody remember? 12, 15 zlotys maybe?
Well, one of those little plastic couple hold 150 ml, which is a pretty standard wine measure,
Really? I thought it was 6 or 8 or something. I can't remember the last time. But
I don't think it's that expensive.
Isn't it weird that people who would scoff at going to the mall get excited about going to the Rynek and buying basically the same stuff in little markets just because it's outside?
It's strange. It is. I mean, it's mostly adults buying Christmas decorations as an excuse to go away for a weekend in the winter without their kids, for their kids.
Well, I mean, when my family members have been over at that time, it's completely different from anything you see in the UK. You're already in an unfamiliar foreign country, and then there's this vast kind of wooden
Wooden toys?
Right, I don't think it's.
We lose a war.
2 years ago, I think I was with my wife in London, and I think it was in Leicester Square. There was also like a Christmas wintertime market.
He has a different wife in Poland, by the way.
And it seemed like the
Just
same.
kidding.
It seemed like the same idea, just done a lot better. Like the products were of high quality, the food was nicer. It was like gated off and more organized than what it is here.
People get excited about this, though. Josh?
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, yes, of course. I mean, every decent-sized town in England will have some kind of Christmas market, but I don't think it's okay. Well, not every town has a square quite as big as the Rynek either. So, okay, I'll stop there.
Well, I think the biggest one in Europe is the one in Poland, so Krakow. So
I think we should note that UNESCO, well, they kind of get on my tits, are commemorating.
Twist your melon.
They're kind of commemorating this because Krakow was famous for its excellent carpenters back in the medieval times, and people would build these elaborate nativity scenes to make extra money at Christmas. They'd tour the villages. Some of the wealthier people would rent out or buy the whole thing, so it was a whole industry which, you know, fed into the beautiful craftsmanship you see all over the city. So of course it is a cool tradition. I just wonder, why does something have to be validated, everything by UNESCO these days? It just seems that every year now the list gets bigger, longer, and everything's a fucking UNESCO site or activity, and it's just beyond belief.
Before we leave the holidays completely behind us, Mike, there's one more thing you wanted to mention about this time of the year.
oh yes, baburka.
Who?
Baburka. So it's basically Saint
Is that a food?
Saint Barbara's Day.
St. Barbara.
Yeah.
Who could forget St. Barbara?
She's the patron saint of miners and such, and it's one
Like
of those
people who dig coal, that kind of miner.
basically they get down and dirty. Wait, that's a different type of saint.
That's a different saint.
In Australia, she's the patron saint of grilling over charcoal, isn't she?
Nice.
But it's one of those days where politicians, you know, they show up at mines and like big industry, and you know, we're with the people. We're one of the, you know, we're one of you guys, and etc. And you'll see it on Tuesday because it's the 4th of December.
We're one of you guys, but my chauffeur's waiting for me, and I have to go.
But basically, it's the day where miners get a little extra pay, and they're allowed to get drunk.
Miners always get a little extra pay for everything.
So
don't
it's
they?
National Manual Labourers Awesome Day.
Basically, yeah. Actually, I remember one really bad, cringy joke that my dad always says about this time of year is basically 2 old miners are coming out, you know, after working a shift, and one asks the other, "Hey, what do you prefer, you know, baburka or sex?" The other one's thinking, you know, I think I have to say I prefer baburka. And the other one asks, "Really? Why?" And the first one says, "Well, because it happens more often."
Cringy is the word.
I like that.
For sure.
Don't mind him, Doogie Senior. I thought that was a good one.
Finally, we get to add some sport. Dave and I have been talking lately. We don't have enough sports on the KrakCast, but we have some today. A couple of stories from that world, including a rant. We were talking about this before we started recording. Dave has some very, very strong opinions about mountaineering.
Well, I just think all mountaineers, modern mountaineers, hate their mothers. How could you walk into the kitchen and say, "Ma'am, I know you love me and you raised me and you spent 20 years worrying about me, and then you spent all your savings helping me get through college and get the job I wanted, but I've decided to quit my job as a lawyer, leave my 2 children and my beautiful wife behind, and climb fucking K2, the most dangerous mountain on earth. And, by the way, I want you to celebrate me for this, and I want the media to bow down and say I'm a wonderful human being. My question is, why? You are the most selfish person on earth. I really don't understand extreme mountaineering. All of these fucking mountains have been climbed. You know, the Sherpas think you're assholes. You're just money to them, okay? Everest was closed down 3 years ago. Closed down by the Nepalese government. They ordered Westerners to stop showing up, that it was too dangerous, that they were forcing Sherpas to go out in conditions that they themselves had classed as ridiculous. And what happened? Westerners kept showing up. We paid for our trip. We're going to go up there and die anyway. All right. You know, it just annoys me so much. Like, what is the point of it all?
Get this man a drink. Calm down.
Another drink?
But what's the Polish connection, and why is it in the news now?
There's always Polish people climbing K2.
They are big on climbing the poles. They are very big on climbing the poles, yeah.
I put a link in. Yeah, somebody climbed a mountain. That's the connection.
Well, It's what do you call it? Winter ascent,
It's like a race or something.
Which sounds like a bad idea right there. Can't you wait 6 months and do it in June? No. We got to do it right now. We got to do it right now. And so the Polish climbers want to do this winter ascent of K2, which is apparently rare or maybe never been done before.
Never been done, but I think the Russians are going to try it first, but nobody expects them to survive. So the Poles are going to, see what happens and learn from their mistakes.
In fact, I can exclusively reveal here on the KrakCast that when you get to the top of the mountain, all that you can see is the other side of the mountain.
Da-da-da.
So far,
view, though.
like there's this Polish climbing organisation, the Polish Winter Himalaya Project, headed up by Piotrek Tomala, who's welcome on the show, Piotrek. The rest of the lads don't feel as extremely about your sport as I do, and I'd love to be educated by you on why you don't hate your mother.
Oh, and why you want the rest of us taxpayers paying for it.
Yeah, we're thinking about 3 preparatory expeditions before K2. They're going to do 3 other Himalayan mountains before they do K2. To let the younger generation of climbers gather necessary experience nearly dying at altitude before they actually die at altitude. The head of the project stated that for the time being, no foreign climbers are being considered for the potential inclusion in the team because of the national character of the expedition. Oh, nationalism rears its ugly head again. Yeah. So far, Polish climbers have reached a peak of 10 out of the 14 8,000ers in winter. Like you say, John, it's gone to the point now where, we've climbed them all 100 times. We've climbed the back side of it, the front side of it, the west side of it, the east side of it. We've done it in summer, we've done it in autumn, and now we're going to do it in winter and blindfold ourselves. Yeah. And instead of bringing oxygen up, we're going to, bring CO2.
We're going to smoke the whole way up. All right, well, there's our quota. There's our quota for mountaineering talk for the whole year, I think, right there. Also in the world of sports, Robert Lewandowski back in the news. When is he ever not in the news? But Dave, he's making the headlines as well this week.
He has moved to 51 goals in UEFA Champions League, all-time standing, and is now in 6th position. He's now ahead of Thierry Henry.
Maybe he'll score some goals for Poland someday.
Oh my God, what are you talking about? Okay, look, he can't win the World Cup on his own, okay? He needs a team behind him. John, what is football? It's a team game, okay? You can't put all of the national team's faults down on Lewandowski's shoulders. Isn't that the knock on him,
though? He doesn't show up when he's wearing the red and white.
Well, as you always point out whenever his name comes up, he's wealthy, he stars in a lot of ads, and he hasn't won the World Cup for Poland. How about we point out a few of the things that he's done that possibly will never be done again by a Polish footballer? Do you know how difficult it is to score 51 goals in the Champions League?
I don't really, but I imagine it's kind of tough.
It's kicking a ball around. How hard could it be?
Yeah, it's a big net. Oh, God. The other team can't use their hands. I mean, come on, how hard can it be?
I already have a hangover. I'm sure our listeners can tell that I'm in a bit of a mood this morning. Screw you guys.
He's going home. That's it for the KrakCast this week. Thanks for listening. Make sure you give us a like on Facebook, share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time.